Amanda was the apple of Carol and Norm's eye, and she was a charmer, beautiful, intelligent, and had a singing voice that it just absolutely worked magic. However, 15-year-old Amanda Todd expired on October the 10th, 2012, after being exploited online for over a period of 4 years and posting a video on YouTube saying that she was being blackmailed by an online predator. Her semi-clothed clips did not begin as an innocent or flirtatious game like so many other instances have. And so those clips were extorted from her in the most criminal style. I want to emphasize again that the police response in my city when they crashed in at her home at 4 a.m., to me it's totally bizarre. And it may have done Amanda serious and very permanent harm. And they chose to accuse her and treat the predator as a victim, or the predators as victims. And such was actually not the case. What were they thinking? Now, I don't know if Amanda confided in them regarding all the conditions of her extortion, or if they ever even knew, because she had been threatened. And so I don't know what she revealed to them initially
when they barged in at 4 a.m. And so, I don't know if she was too scared to let them know what was going on, or if she tried to tell them and they didn't believe her. I'm not sure. And but that is all how it went down. Welcome to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel and to an episode of Missing Kids. And today we are continuing the discussion on Amanda Todd. Even though she was never actually a missing child, her life represents what all my other cases have been reviewing. And it reveals that she had a secret, a deep, dark secret that eventually had to be let out. And her dark secret was that she was being threatened, bullied into, posing into these suggestive clips. And I'm not going to go into that because what's important here is not exactly what her intention was, but what was in the mind of the predator at the time. And he wanted to completely dominate her and control her. He controlled her mind, he controlled her actions, he threatened her. And so, yeah. So it's important to realize that she had other things going on in her life as well. For instance, there may have been some competition over a boy that was popular in her school while she was still living in my city. And so she had to deal with that issue as well. She was bullied by her classmates. And so, yeah, she dealt with an awful lot of enormous pain and ugliness before she actually tried to take herself off the scene and did. So yeah, it's pretty sad. So when I talk about Amanda Todd and what she endured in her lifetime, all these other missing kid cases, we have to try to imagine all those cases in the same sort of light, maybe not exactly the same situation, but that every one of these missing kids that we review actually probably had a predator like the one we're going to talk about now in their lives. And so it's not a pleasant or easy situation to deal with. Before she took herself off the scene, Amanda Todd told her story in a 9-minute video, which is still here, posted on YouTube. It's still around and it's spread around the world, capturing 14.8 million views when all of this began to go down. And so the extortionist Coban was extradited from the Netherlands to Canada in 2020 to face charges, 5 of them. And so more about the trial just a little bit later. Coban was eventually, many years later, convicted of extortion and 2 counts of possession of child images and child luring and criminal harassment, all against Amanda Todd. So she did go through a lot, guys. And I'm disappointed that the police in my city weren't able to get a firm grasp of the situation. Either they were part of an abusive attack against her, or they just didn't have all the facts. I'm thinking they didn't have all the facts that were required at the time. And so, yeah, I think that would be a better way to look at that entire situation with respect to the police reports and everything like that. And so, as you know from our last discussion, Amanda Todd left my city where she was living with her father, and went to BC, British Columbia, Canada, to be with her mother, Carol Todd. And so by now we must have figured out that the Todds were separated, but still cared very deeply about Amanda and wanted everything that they could possibly give her to get through this ordeal. So, in British Columbia, the Supreme Court Justice Martha Devlin spent a day instructing a jury that they could only find Coban guilty of all these charges against him if the Crown could, present a logical story and produce evidence that would sway the jury beyond a shadow of a doubt. Otherwise, if they couldn't prove the case against him beyond the shadow of a doubt, they would have to acquit him, and then he wouldn't be able to be tried again, even if they found new and definite evidence against him. And so, as you all know, in my recent review of Christian Bruckner, the accused in the Madeleine McCann case, he was acquitted of all the other charges that had been going against him as well, because there wasn't enough evidence. And so he probably will be acquitted. Now, the trial is still ongoing. The jury is still deliberating in that case. So, but we're waiting on that. And it's probably going to be that he's going to be acquitted. And so up until now, the Crown has claimed in Germany that there is no evidence to suspect the suspect. Now, early in this trial, the trial had two parts to it. There was the preliminary and then the real trial that came afterward. And so early in the trial, a Dutch officer testified that there was a deleted video file that had been played on one device in December of 2010. And so it corresponded with a time when Amanda was being actively and aggressively harassed and stalked. But Coban's defense argued that sharing a link is not a guilt. It's not a chargeable offense. It was just a link and not an actual image. So I don't buy that. The video was sent out as a link, but there was nothing to show that it was stored as data on the seized devices. And so that is what the jury was told on the second day of closing arguments. Over the course of several hours, Devlin reviewed testimony and evidence that had been presented to jurors during the lengthy and complex trial. She guided the jury through the definition of each criminal count that was sworn against Coban and explained the criteria that the Crown needed to convict. Now, in the initial hearing that was held several years before this trial, Norm Todd attended it and testified. And so that was held several years earlier. And so the Dutch national, Coban, 44, pleaded not guilty at the time to 5 criminal charges that related to Todd's case. And so those charges included, as I explained before, extortion, child images, child luring, and a couple of each. So the Crown Attorney, Louise Kenworthy, wrapped up her closing arguments, and she said that there was enough information to link Coban to harassment and extortion. So those were not her words exactly and precisely, and I want to be careful when I do this, but that was her meaning to the jury. Needless to say, Coban indeed was later convicted of all of those charges: extortion, 2 counts of child images and child luring, and criminal harassment against Amanda Todd, the British Columbian teenager whose story spread around the globe after she transpired by her own hand well over a decade ago. A jury delivered that guilty verdict in the Supreme Court in New Westminster, British Columbia, after 1 day of deliberation. And so I guess that is to say that there was quite enough evidence to convict him. And so Carol, the mother, Carol Todd, said that she believes this trial set an example in Canadian law and also around the world that would show criminals and innocent people alike that anyone suspected of such a horrific crime could be extradited to stand trial in any country. Guilty verdicts came after 7 weeks of testimony that involved dozens and dozens of witnesses, exhibits, and evidence presented by Crown prosecutors prior to the start of closing arguments. And by this time, Amanda's father, Norm Todd, had already passed away. So he wasn't able to witness it, for himself, that justice had indeed at last been served for his daughter, Amanda Todd. I also add that Coban's defense lawyer did not call any evidence at all in the trial. And so Amanda's mother, Carol, sat in the back of the courtroom taking notes, but she repositioned herself when the suspect returned to the courtroom and made sure that she was right within his line of vision. I really have to applaud Carol. I hope I can do her daughter justice by not making any errors or trying to keep the account as clear and concise as I can. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth. But I really do think that she was a great fighter, and Carol Todd deserves so much credit. She must have been so strong and brave to attend all of those proceedings on her own without her husband, and knowing that her daughter was no longer around. I imagine she must have gone through torture. But in the end, it was all worth it. Of course, this is not a happy ending, but it's a good ending. And it's one I hope that we can all learn from. Now, speaking to the television news stations outside the courtroom after the trial, Carol appeared to be somewhat happy. And I would say, even if she were overjoyed, it would not be where credit was not due. She didn't want to use happy, expressive language because she knew that her daughter could not be revived from the positive outcome, but she realized that justice had been served. And so I want to cry. Carol Todd did add that she wanted to emphasize that she always believed what her daughter told her. And she claimed that if she could speak to Amanda at that moment, she would reinstate the fact that she always had faith in Amanda and believed in her. Carol Todd never doubted the truthfulness of her daughter in this account. in this horrific crime that was committed against her. A series of many horrible and horrific and terrifying crimes all gathered together as one horrific crime. I don't know how she managed to endure over 4 years of it. So what Amanda Todd has left behind is a legacy of protection and safety online, and hopefully elsewhere too, wherever children and juveniles are concerned. The child protection experts cannot emphasize enough the importance of child safety online, and they really think that the standards have to be kept in place and intact at all times. And so new guidelines began to come out after this trial, which ended in 2020, around the time of the pandemic or just before that. And so it was all in the wake of this Dutch man's conviction for extorting the teenager who ended up taking herself off the scene as a result. And she couldn't cope. She was just a little girl. She couldn't cope with it. She was being thrust into the most criminal position that even an adult would have had problems with. And she was just a child. That is how vicious this crime actually is. Tragic that another teenager, a 17-year-old boy, Daniel, resorted to the same fate. Only hours after becoming a victim of an online extortion scheme that was perpetuated using that silly app, Snapchat. And I'm not going to comment about it, but really Snapchat. And so, yeah, he only could endure just a few hours before he himself took himself off the scene. It was with Amanda and Daniel's cases that child experts could finally rest a little easier in knowing that these were the cases that toughened the laws of child safety online. And yes, I remember hearing about the laws changing, and I remember the pandemic was kind of in the background of all that. Children going to school or not going to school, taking classes online, and the safety issues surrounding that. Yeah, that's a big issue to deal with. And so it all sends a clear message regarding child safety online. As for the criminal Coban, he was brought into Canada, and so it is important to every one of us because we can see that Canada, particularly the province British Columbia, and perhaps not Ontario, Canada took this seriously and ensured our justice system would be deeply involved. And so, yeah, it took Canada to open up everybody's eyes. These were tragic cases, guys, and they're only scratching the surface. There's so many other cases like this out there, but it's not normally what I do. I don't review these kind of cases, but it's so tragic. So in 2020, when the verdict was issued, it came at a time when the problem of online extortion and financial gain became a focal issue. Right in the middle of alarming statistics and warning from police forces around the country. Okay, I understand that. Warnings and prevention are great and very essential measures. But what about the measures that you take once it becomes a little late in the game? For instance, at Amanda Todd's house at 4 a.m. in the morning. We need to work on those measures as well, and maybe, try to perfect it even more and more. There's always room for improvement, right? And around this time, after the convictions, Canadian Child Protection Services released an analysis that suggested there was a very significant and stark rise in these sorts of crimes that target youth financially and emotionally. It's awful. Sadly, the majority of these victims are teen males. In 2022, Canada opened 322 cases in July, compared to only 85 in 2021. So yeah, there was a great big rise. And I'm probably imagining that a lot of that could have come from boredom and, the pandemic and being isolated. Maybe that has something to do with the rise. Out of all those cases, 92% of them were boys or young men, teenagers. RCMP's National Child Exploitation Crime Center received a total of 52,306 complaints for the year 2020 to 2021. I'm just guessing that many of those came from my province. That number would indicate a 510% increase from the years earlier, going back to 7 years earlier. And so experts have pointed to increasing online activity during, like I just said, the pandemic isolation as a contributing factor. I would imagine, yeah. Wow. I remember studying the Black Death in school. And we all know from reading those history books that after the Black Death, there was another pandemic of rising crime. And so, yeah, when finances become depleted and your life situation is threatened, it really does something to the crime rate. So what is the solution to all that? Well, websites, apps, and many other things as well. When they come into the marketplace without any guidelines, it's not sufficient. It's not. There needs to be guidelines that are very clear and specific to whatever app or website there is. Now, age limits, that's a good one, but if you know, YouTube, there are children all over. And I really hate to do this, but when I see a child or a child's channel in my comments, I delete it. Not because I hate the channel or the child, but because I want to contribute to a safe online community. And I don't approve of parents who do not monitor their child's online activity, coming into a room, a channel such as mine, where I review some of the most horrific cases, is not good for a child to come. Although I keep it clean, yeah, it's okay for a child to hear what I say, but it's not okay for them to hear. And it's not okay for children to come to my channel and comment, because I'm thinking of YouTube's guidelines in general as a whole. And I wish that parents would be more cautious online regarding their children. Like, for instance, YouTube creators. I think that they should be very careful about exploiting their children online on a continuous and continual basis. To film your child every day and then upload footage, okay, once in a while, maybe that's good. But to do that as a regular routine on your child, I would question that, only because of things like this. When you want to understand why I'm questioning all of this thing with children being online, think of Amanda Todd. And then you'll get why I'm against children coming to my channel to comment. I don't subscribe to children's channels, and that's why I don't want to perpetuate that. I don't want other adults to use me as a way to get to children. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's coming out right, but I don't think it's good for children to come out here and talk. And if they have their own channel, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to talk about that, but I really do think that there's something should be done about it. And I don't know how else to address this. And so the way one person in the article alluded to, all of this is that compare a children's website or any website to a play park, a playground. Now, if society doesn't allow a play structure in a park to be there without certain safety precautions like bars and signs, for example, why should the online world be any different? There's no consistency. There needs to be more consistency with respect to age. And you know what I'm saying, right? There isn't enough of a barrier between the adults who are dangerous and children who are innocent. There isn't much of a barrier. We need to create stronger and better barriers that will protect them. And for parents who continuously put their kids online, even once in a while, it's a really big issue. So, yeah. Now, the Canadian federal government did announce that it was reestablishing consultations for potential online harmful legislation. Trying to build laws around things that are harmful and around things that are safe. You're trying to change things around. And as far as that progress is concerned, I'm not exactly sure where they're at, but at least it's a start. A group of academics studying the issue could not come to a consensus concerning several issues, including whether software companies should be forced to monitor or remove harmful content. And I can see the stress that YouTube operators must go through. Whether private messaging should be included in legislation, and how to define harm and harmful in legislation. So that's a tall order. And because we've been ignoring a lot of that for so many years, I remember when I first started using a computer, it was so dangerous out there. And I think I'm lucky that for the most part of those years, I didn't know how to swap a photograph. Even though I wanted to, I knew there was a way, I just never did it. Once or twice, and I decided I wouldn't do it anymore. I wanted to do it because I wanted to know how to do it. But it's not a safe thing to do. And so that is Amanda Todd's legacy. She instigated this entire new generation of safety and precaution. But like I said before, I think we need to work on the actual reporting system that we have, especially in my province. It's so darn hard to get anything reported. And it's no wonder why sometimes you hear that my province has the lowest crime rate. Well, nothing can get reported. I think anonymous reporting is key to online safety. And if you insist on an identity every time something happens to a child, for a child to make or file a report, it's all part of the process. I think remaining anonymous is a big bonus plus in remaining safe. However, there are other things that I'm not altogether too sure about. For instance, what police and child protective services and parents and teachers should do once a situation like this gets out of hand and blows up in your face. And so if you go to Amanda Todd's videos, all published under Carol Todd, you will see that she was indeed a magnificent star. And I imagine that a lot of her star quality would have probably been at the bottom of her issues with other classmates in the beginning. And so I hope that you do get a chance to see Amanda Todd's vlogs and listen to her wonderful voice. She was absolutely, she was full of personality that really exudes from all of her songs and the things that she tried to communicate to us online. And so, yeah. Thank you so much for listening and watching.